Good morning. My name is Joseph Aprile, and I would like to read a series of poems I refer to collectively as peace poems. The first is called a peace poem. Broken skulls of impassioned warriors adorn the oblique shadows of human history. Cult of death remains pervasive, dying for one's country, dying for the wayward dreams of empire. Empires come and go like a malevolent perennial blossom. Savage winds of vengeance and retribution, disfigured honor and overblown causes, wreck upon the pyre of human possibilities. Mothers have lamented over the staggering breadth of generations, the premature loss of husbands and children, to shrill reverberations of the macabre dance of war. Impoverished billions of hapless souls sift through the detritus of progress in an attempt to draw sustenance from stone. Cycles of needless suffering continue. Will to power drones on, erecting palaces among the bones of the living. Stark, brilliant testimonials to the industry of greed and ambition rise like majestic spires from a planet made feeble by indifference. Ideas that need to be forsaken still thrive. Crimes against humanity perpetuated in the name of the God of the moment. Cities are razed by marvelous weapons of insidious destruction in the twisted hope that rivers of blood can be used to craft victory without killing the soul of those who prevail above the carnage. Humanity is marching with deliberate precision in a parade that leads to a fiery cauldron of despair. Humanity is dancing to a rhapsody that inspires the self-immolation of the human spirit. Humanity is the rudder of a magnificent ship that is poised at the abyss, with its sails billowing in a tumultuous breeze filled with brimstone and fire. Many voices call out from the centuries, though they can barely be heard above the raucous cacophony of war. They are joined by those still living, enfeebled by abuse and neglect. Littered among the dead lay the corpses of those impaled by the reckless sword of ignorance and twisted logic. In spite of all the obstacles, all the crazed indifference, and the barren vision of ideologues who see nothing but the fruits of extreme and impossible ideas, all the pointless babble of material progress, all the hollow ideas grown gravid with the lure of profit, all the smoke and mirrors, the call for a peaceful world can still be heard. Peace is the way out of the darkness. Peace is the light that can brighten the future. Peace is the path to true human freedom. Only peace can unshackle the spirit from the bonds of history. Only peace can save humankind from the limits of its own conclusions. The next poem is referred to simply as War. Strident pronouncements from the pulpit of state proclaiming superiority, demanding loyalty, stirring the shimmering cauldron of fear, a tsunami of emotions assaulting the senses. War grinds on, poking desperate holes in the fabric of reason. Humans stand astride the abyss of the damned and plunge without reluctance into the chaos of their own making. War shreds humanity under the staggering weight of bountiful corpses left bloodless, discharged from the living in a torrent of metal and fire. Cycles of endless violence and retribution falling upon the sharpened spikes of hatred, ignorance, fear. War glorifies pitiful death upon the altar of the unrelenting darkness. I mourn for all the pointless dead, for the gravestones piled high upon the beleaguered hearts of all the mothers who have wept over the ashes of their vanquished children. War's hollow victories give succor to the void and offer the promise of future grief upon the bones of fractured peace. I mourn for needless suffering, for the compendium of horrors, for the blood and sinews of the armies of victims who fall to the earth so thoroughly broken. War is carnage unredeemed by the rhetoric of shallow righteousness or the politics of punishment and retribution. I long for a time when peace is no longer a sentiment reserved for the prophets, not just a word used on special occasions, not simply a sweet turn of phrase laced within the rhetoric of the politics of deception, but a way of being within the substance of humanity. The next poem I call The Butcher's Block. On to the butcher's block it goes, ahoy, ahoy, shimmering blade, its sharpened crystalline edges ready to assault the vault of the head, cracking the skull, eviscerating joy and compassion, dispatching kindness with adept precision, leaving the ghost of the future gasping on the broken floor. On to the butcher's block it goes, ahoy, ahoy. The following is a brief poem with, of course, the same subject. Pointless violence. From the avarice of pointless violence comes a sea of regrettable affection, born of the illusion of reasoned justice. The next one is entitled War, a Definition. Humanity's black hole, ultimate testimonial to human failure, great wheel of despair, end of reason, abyss of the soul, mother's lament, outrageous waste of the possible, assassin of the future. I would finally like to end with a poem I call A Dream of Salvation. And so it came to pass that within a generation, truth no longer was a whisper but a flood of clarity. Pain was no longer shunned but shared freely. Guns and all weapons of bad intention or ill feeling were melted down to their base metals and fashioned into implements of healing. All who were hungry were fed. All who feared were reassured. All who were pariahs were brought into the human fold. All who were filled with the bile of hatred were cajoled with sweetness and caring. All who suffered needlessly from their lack of faith in themselves were shown the blazing light of true wisdom. All who had hearts weighted by greed freed themselves from the onerous weight of possessions. All who loved ignorance were exposed to the rapture and wonder of learning. All who learned to usurp themselves and others with power recognized their own impotence. All who were crippled and torn apart by disease became aware of their true worth. Artists and lovers of knowledge and thought were finally appreciated. All without homes found shelter in the heart of humanity. All who were fractured were made whole. All who were obsessed by race or creed were freed of their limitations. All limited and pernicious ideas fell to oblivion from their own weight. All who would have become demagogues found the life of true service. All ideas born of avarice and rooted in war were finally dead. All embraced all. Well, thank you much for listening, and take care.